everyone, it's Danny. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm back with another process video for the Traveler's Notebook online design team, and I'm going to be using the beautiful Happiness collection by Coco Vanilla Studio. Make sure you check out the description box for the link to the store and my 10% off discount code. Now I'm going to start out my layout with a piece of blank white 12 by 12 cardstock. And I've got a little stack of photos there because I'm not actually 100% sure which photo I want to use at this point. So I have a pretty good idea of where the layout is going. I've already gone ahead off camera and fussy cut one of the papers, and you'll see me pull it out right here. It's the wreath paper. It's absolutely stunning, and I knew I wanted to fussy cut that out straight away. And as you can see, the background is pretty much white already, but it's kind of a little bit grey compared to bright white. So I fussy cut the whole wreath out, and I knew I wanted to lift it up on some foam to create more dimension, and definitely wanted to add some more mixed media. So I pulled out these two photos of my little girl. She was only about 6 weeks old in these photos, and yes, she is already propping herself up on her forearms. Both my kids came out with really good muscle tone and very well advanced physically, so yeah, they both crawled really early and everything. So yeah, she was up and active, and I love her little face. She was smiling pretty much from the moment she was born. She was just such a happy, smiley baby. So I want to use both of these photos. They're very similar, but she has a slightly different facial expression in each one. So good way to use up two photos. I couldn't choose between them. They're both really sweet. So there we go. Back to that whole that whole fussy cut wreath is backed with some adhesive foam, double-sided. I'm just going to go ahead and start matting my photos. So I'm using some scrap white cardstock here just to add a thin white border. And then I'm going to dive into the 6x8 paper pad. I love this thing. I have not got the smaller paper pads in the past, but I am making myself get them now because I'm getting so much use out of them. So I pull out this navy blue, and I like this because there's not a whole lot of navy in that wreath, but you can see those leaves are that dark navy, and it really brings the eye straight to those photos, that pop of dark navy all the way around that white strip. So I go ahead and do that for both my photos, and this is pretty much how they're going to end up. I'm going to tuck my top photo under the top of the wreath there, and the bottom one will sort of overlap. So I really love this paper. I'm sort of playing around with photo layers. I am going to pull out the tiny little florals. I think about that pink one, but I'd go with this one. It's very busy, but it's really nice for a thin photo mat. And I will end up pulling out that painterly sort of mixed media paper for the other photo. So for this, I'm just going to cut out a sort of right angle, like you can see a right angle strip to mat my photos with, because I'm trying to, I always try to save as much paper as I possibly can, and I'm just showing a little thin strip around opposite corners. So I really don't want to have to use a whole sheet of paper just to add one photo layer to my photo. So I really love that soft detail just peeking out from behind my photo there. And I am going to take my little fussy cutting scissors and just distress all my edges, give them a bit of a roughen up. Okay, now I'm going to use that mixed media paper, and I'm going to do the same thing on this photo. So just using a couple of different papers just to create a little bit of interest. And same with this one, I'm going to distress the edges. Not too much, just a little bit. And this is a really good way to use up some of those scraps that you have laying around. As you can see, this one I've punched some circles out of that right hand side, so there's not a lot I can do with that paper, but it is good for photo mats. Okay, this tray you can see is full of fussy cut stuff, so I sat down one night and fussy cut out a bunch of these papers while I was watching TV. So these little cards I have are the journal card cut apart sheet from the 6x8 paper pad, and I have a few little phrases down the bottom there, but I'm not actually going to use those. I thought I'd use that little framed card for journaling, but I end up taking that off. But I do use this quote. I really, really love this little quote card, and I've just snipped my wreath there a little bit so I can slide that in, sort of wedge it in there. And it just creates a bit of a nice dimension to see that flower laid over the top of the card like that. Okay, I'm going to go through the die cut titles and pick out a title that's very generic, So Lovely. I have Happy there just in case, but I do go with So Lovely. But I don't know, how creative can you get? I mean, she is lovely. Look at her little face. Okay, so mixed media time. I'm pulled out my gesso and it's just white gesso and I'm just scraping on a really thin layer over most of my page. I don't bother too much with the very center and I don't worry about going too close right up to the edges because I'm going to put my paint on in that sort of circular shape, the same as the wreath. So these are my watercolors. They're just cheap ones, nothing special. I like that there's lots of colors. They work fine for me. I don't have any problems with them. Probably not the most pigmented of things, but I tend to go pretty light and pastel anyway, so it's fine. So I'm just trying to mix up some of that nice pale blue that's in the collection. And I'm just sort of I'm going to splodge this all around sort of alternating colors. So I'm going to use some blue and some orange and some pink, and I'm just using a bit of paintbrush and a bit of the packaging technique. So that ends up a bit light, so I do add some more, sort of darken it up a little bit. And now I'm going to go in with some orange. I haven't kept this whole process in. I've got a fair bit of it out. It does take me a long time generally to do mixed media. So I'm trying to get that peachy sort of orange that's in those flowers. You can see right at the bottom of the wreath there's that sort of peachy orange flower. So I'm mixing a bunch of the oranges and the yellows and the peaches and just trying to get just the right color. It's pretty close. I mean, in the end, most of this is going to be covered up by the wreath anyway. So I just want a little bit sort of picking out from around the wreath, adding a bit more color to that white background, and yeah, just some messy, messy watercolor. So I put my wreath over the top and I'm using my paintbrush just to sort of scribble around where it's going to be seen, because there's not much point in putting a whole bunch of paint on and then putting the wreath on and it all being underneath the wreath. So I'm making sure that my mixed media is going to peek out from behind that wreath. There you go. And now a bit of nice bright pink. I'm really happy with how this turned out in the end. I mean, it looks terrible right now. It always does. You know, if you're doing mixed media and you think, oh, this looks awful, just keep going. Just keep going. If you hate it, let it dry, walk away, come back to it, and it's amazing how different it will look when it's dry. So now I'm just going in with some splatters. I'm just doing splatters in the same colors that I've done the paint in on the background. So I'm just going over the pink with some pink splatters and the orange with some orange and now some blue. Just messy splatters all over the place. And there we go, that's dry. And when I put the wreath on, I think it looks lovely anyway. So I'm really, really happy with that. So now I'm putting my photos back. I'm putting my little quote card back. And I pretty much decided at this point I'm not going to use that journaling card. I don't really need to journal. I mean, it's just cute baby photos. There's no special story. She's just lovely. So I love that quote. If you can't read it, it says, "Making memories with you is my favorite thing to do." And it's just perfect. So I'm going ahead with these butterflies. These are all fussy cut out from the butterfly paper. I've cut out the 12 by 12 and the 6 by 8. So those smaller ones are from the 6 by 8 paper. And I think I've pretty much cut out an entire sheet of that 12 by 12 butterfly paper. It's just so beautiful. There's so many different colours on there. So it's really perfect. Okay, I'm starting to glue things down. I'm adding a little bit of foam behind my photo there because the bottom corner is popped up on top of the wreath. So make sure it's all on the one level. And yeah, just tucking him underneath there. I really, really love this. I like that these photos are two different sort of darknesses, I suppose. The one at the front is lighter and the one at the back is a little bit darker, and it creates even more dimension because the one at the front seems like it's coming up off the page even more. So those labels are free printables from Caitlin Schaefer. They're great. She has a bunch of different colours, and I just find them really, really useful for things like this, names and dates. So I've just put her name and the date on that little label. And now I'm going to go through and stick down my title. I am going to overlay the word lovely with the wreath. So I'm just popping up the front part of the word there so it's all on one level. Otherwise it would look really wonky. So I'm just going to glue that in. Excuse my head there. Just had to make sure it was straight. And I mean, it doesn't matter so much because these are script words, so they don't look perfectly straight anyway. The good thing about using such a big piece on the page is not a whole lot I can do with it from here, so I'm happy to start gluing things down. Adding in that little navy label in the back there too, just to fill in a little bit of that blank space. That corner looked kind of odd. And I put down this little navy butterfly. I don't know, it just seemed to fill that space really nicely. And another little pop of navy around those photos. So I'm going to start gluing my butterflies in now. So I don't know whether you can see that I've popped up the wings on some adhesive foam, so just little strips of foam tape. And that just makes them seem like they're alive and floating up off the page, and they've just landed on the flowers and they're just sitting there. I don't know. I really love that. I do that with every butterfly I put on a scrapbook page. And I use a lot of them. I like butterflies. I'm not going to apologize for it. So I'm just going around doing that for all of these little butterflies. And yeah, I'm just making sure to really press down on the center there, because when you do pop them up on foam, if you're using glue in the middle and not tape, which I do because it tends to last longer and hold a bit better, then you really have to press down that middle because they can lift up. Alright, I love these stickers. They're not cut perfectly all the way through, and I think I heard someone else mention that theirs weren't either, so it's probably a universal thing, but just being really careful to peel them up. But I love the little word phrases, the black and white typewriter font. They're just really nice. So I put in a couple down the bottom there that say happy little moments here and now, and then this one just says curious, and I had to pop that in because that is just my little girl all over. She is such a curious little bub. And here are the close-ups. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Don't forget to give me that big old thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.